everybody. So in this video, we're going to do something a little different today. I brought my panel on. We're going to discuss
There you go. All about Universal, baby.
Universal, baby. So today's show is all about Universal. Okay, I've done Universal videos in the past, but we've never done like a full show on Universal. I'm going to go ahead and introduce my panel, and we're going to dive right in. So first on deck is Mr. Disney Family Man 23, George. Welcome to the show, George. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, and it's going to be great. I can't wait to have this discussion with you all about Universal because it's a topic I really don't talk about as much, on my YouTube channel. So it should be cool.
Definitely. And if you can let everyone at home know where they can find you on social media before we get started.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel there we go, Disney Family Man 23. And you can also find me on Twitter at Disney George and also on Instagram under the Disney Family Man 23 name.
So Universal doesn't really have like, the chime where you scan. So I had to work something up just for everybody. Cheers, George.
Dinos. Hey, that's a shout out to our friend Showcase, huh, Audrey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh man, he loves them dinos. He loves them dinos. We think about you here, sir.
I'm in the park. I'll wait for you guys to get through that turnstile.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all.
He might turn into Universal Family Man after this point.
You might.
Make a second channel.
So Vash, if you can introduce yourself and let everyone at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Hey, best place to find me or interact with me, I should say, is at Vash Scott. It's right down here. At Vash Guy on Twitter, just like it's spelled right there. And then to see me, well, I'm on your channel, Orange Grove, at Freshly Squeezed, your source for news and juicy info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. You see, everybody gets it. Okay, here we go. Already.
And Mr. Rudio, if you can introduce yourself and let everyone know at home where they can find you on social media.
Sure. You guys can find me on Instagram and on TikTok. Rudio. Simple as that. We're talking everything park, especially right now. We got horror news creeping up on us, so getting us hyped for that. So let's get ready. Let's go.
Let's go.
Got you in.
all you 80s babies out there, man. Nintendo.
Yup.
So the first topic in our Universal conversation is Disney and Universal, the competition. Now, I want to go ahead and share something. And this is, I kind of want to preface this by saying I'm showing this to kind of spark conversation and kind of play a little devil's advocate. So I'm gonna show this, and then I'm gonna kind of get into it with you guys in regards to this. Okay. So this is 2018 and 2019, the attendance figures for theme parks. Is it now, mind you, this is a third party that does this. It's the Themed Entertainment Association. They do this like every year, but they give pretty much their guesstimates as to what each park did for that prior year. Because Disney doesn't release official numbers, so these other companies do it for them basically. So for 2018. Disney, DCA, and Island of Adventure were pretty much neck and neck, but DCA did beat Island of Adventure that year by a margin, a very, very slim margin, right? In 2019, though, it kind of flipped back to Universal Island of Adventure. They ended up beating DCA. They had Hagrid's, the new Hagrid's roller coaster that year, so they got a 6% jump. So that's pretty good. But nonetheless, they were still pretty close in the attendance. My question to you guys to kind of start off this whole competition of the two companies debate, and I'll start with you, Dre. Seeing those numbers, Islands of Adventure, the really the kind of the creme de la creme of Universal, kind of neck and neck with DCA, which isn't so much known to be the creme de la creme of Disney. If you're a Disney CEO, Dre, what's the case that you would make to worry about Universal? Why should Disney worry about Universal based on these numbers?
Based on the numbers, well, my only point of reference, or the only kind of pushback I would have against those numbers specifically are, Disneyland and Disney California Adventure got significant local annual visitation in both 2018 and 2019 that bumped those numbers up every single year. For Islands of Adventure, they're getting people all around the world coming to that park and that resort, and so it growing like that. I mean, look, one could make the argument. Well, they're lower than I believe all four Walt Disney World parks are represented above that. One could make the argument, but I got to be honest. I would be looking at that, because now, they're taking over DCA. What's next? I mean, is it Animal Kingdom? Is it Disney Hollywood Studios? As this park grows at its capacity, as people start coming back over and over again, as Epic Universe, which is going to be their largest theme park stateside that they will have ever built. It's gonna change the marketplace. It's gonna change people's enthusiasm for Universal, how they think about Universal, the public perception of it. Okay, maybe you do have the attendance right now, but you rest on your laurels? I don't know.
Yeah, and you make a good point. And really, all Universal has to really do is kind of pick off a day or so of that Walt Disney World visit, and it's kind of a success, to be real honest. I mean, if they can pick a day or two off of what you would have done at Walt Disney World, well, it's not so much a loss.
And the other thing is if they visit Universal first, those are where the dollars go. It's not all about capacity or attendance. It's also about where people are staying, if they're staying at Universal or if they're staying at Walt Disney World, and where they're visiting first.
Absolutely. And I have personally not stayed at a Universal hotel, but I've heard their hotels are really, really good.
They are very, very good and relatively affordable, which is why a lot of families are choosing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Family Man 23, I'm gonna present to you the same question based on the attendance numbers of Island of Adventure, kind of just neck and neck with DCA. I mean, why as Disney, Disney CEO George, why should you be worried or concerned about Universal based on these numbers, or not concerned?
Well, speaking on Disney's behalf, for me, it just seems as if they're not really that worried, because I think if they really were, there would be changes coming to the Disney parks as far as trying to compete with Universal in that instance. But being that Disney's not moving on that notion, and Universal, I mean, let's face it, Universal has been cranking out some good deals, with the park tickets and resort hotels, and people are wondering in the community, why isn't Disney kind of retaliating back on that notion? And I just think in their mind, again, they're probably relying on, everything of saying, hey, look at these numbers. The numbers don't lie. We're still number one with the Magic Kingdom and also with the Florida parks. And hey, DCA is not the greatest Disney park ever, and yet it's neck and neck with Islands of Adventure, which, as you said, Orange Grove, that it's pretty much for the Florida division of Universal, that's the number one park. I mean, it has Hagrid's, it has the Wizarding World as far as like with the Forbidden Journey and what have you, but yet it still comes under the mark than the other Disney parks. So I really think, speaking only on Disney's side, I really feel like that Disney isn't really doing too much. And I feel like with Universal, they're moving forward with Epic Universe to kind of see where they can push Disney as far as getting those numbers, because I truly feel like Epic Universe is going to be sort of like the hump that breaks the camel's back, so to speak, that can possibly get a lot of Disney fans over to Universal.
Yeah,
and quite frankly, staying on Disney property at Walt Disney World, I don't know too much about for Universal, but I see a lot of people walking into the hotels carrying Wizarding World of Harry Potter bags and Universal bags. So that's telling me that a lot of people that are staying on Disney property are spending 2 to 3 days over at Universal.
absolutely. Mr. Rudio, same question posed to you. You're Disney CEO, Rudio. You are the guy, and your assistant comes in with the attendance numbers that I just showed you. It's Island of Adventure is neck and neck with DCA. Why should or shouldn't you be concerned about Universal as competition?
I think one thing we haven't put into effect. What year are those numbers from? 2019, I'm assuming, right?
2018 and 19.
2018, 2019. There was this one little ride that came out in the beginning of the summer, and it's called the Velocicoaster. The Velocicoaster has gained a lot of word of mouth from coast to coast. They let a lot of social influencers come and ride the ride. They did a lot of test rides prior to the grand opening. So with gaining all that traction and doing it in the same month of Avengers Campus grand opening, to me, living on the West Coast, going to Avengers Campus the month of that opening, all I heard was about Velocicoaster, how great Velocicoaster is, how it's the best roller coaster that Universal has in their park. So in my eyes, I'm looking at these numbers and I'm saying, we got them this year. Don't even worry about it. Velocicoaster it's going to carry this park for the next 5 years. And while it carries us for the next 5 years, Epic Universe will be being built. So I think they have it right where they want them.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm actually hearing a lot of the similar sentiments about Velocicoaster, that it's so good. It's so kind of transformative for that park, that there is going to be kind of a lack of investment going forward for the next 5 years, like you said, Rodeo, just because it is so good. I mean, that park is so stacked. While Epic Universe is coming up, maybe Studios gets a little bit more attention.
Yeah. Wow.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I've like on social media and what have you, Twitter, I hear a lot of, I don't really hear anything negative about Velocicoaster. I mean, it's pretty much all positive. So there's a lot of good word of mouth spreading about that attraction. I wanted to, while we're on the subject of like Universal and Disney and the competition factor, I wanted to bring into this conversation the Marvel deal, the elephant in the room. For those of you at home that are not familiar, Marvel, before they were bought out by Disney, they signed a contract with Universal that everything, what is it, east of the Mississippi, is basically theirs. So, I mean, like Universal is the only one that can do anything Marvel east of the Mississippi. Now, this only includes, from what I understand, the characters that currently exist in Island of Adventure. So that's not necessarily the ancillary material like Eternals and things like that. So anything that's represented in the current superhero island, Disney can't do it in Florida at Walt Disney World. So I wanted to touch upon this deal. Dre, I'll start with you. What do you think about the deal, and what do you think about the chances of Disney kind of working something out to get these rights back? Or is it pretty much, lost forever? Do you think that this is never going to happen?
Bob Iger had tried, and their team had tried to kind of coax Universal, Comcast, in giving up those rights. And back in that day, the price was a little bit too rich for their blood. From what I understand, Comcast wanted Disney to tank Oz the Great and Powerful before it came out, like get rid of it entirely, because they were coming out with what's that musical called? Wicked, yeah. Okay. Their film and their film franchise and that kind of stuff going forward, and Disney, and that was just one step too far for them, and then the talks broke off. And so now we have Chapek in there. And honestly, I mean, the one opportunity that is presented with Chapek being in the seat is, hey, can we restart these negotiations? Can we restart these talks? Because look, Chapek, he's a consumer products guy. He's a merch guy. To Disney Family Man's point, it's not just about who visits these parks, but it's not about how many, but it's about who and who spends the big dollars. And when international tourists go over to Islands of Adventure and go to Wizarding World, they spend a lot of money. I mean, it's not outrageous to spend, for a family of 4 to spend like $2,000 at the Wizarding World. I mean, it's crazy business. It's crazy numbers. And I'm not saying that Marvel would do that, but again, we don't know because we just never gone down that route. If I were Chapek right now, I would definitely start those negotiations. Look, they have Simpsons. They have a Marvel presence right now. Honestly, what I would do is, hey, look, Simpsons stays under the previously established contract. We get access to the MCU characters, the MCU brand. Your stuff is grandfathered in. We take a little bit more of the, merchandise licensing fees because I don't think it's a percentage. I think it's just a straight fee at the end of the year kind of thing. And in compensation for all that, we give you a big wad of cash because that's what it's really going to take because there's no incentive for Universal or for Comcast to do anything else. So if you can get those talks back up, man, that would ingratiate himself with fans. That's for sure. I mean, it's huge.
It's huge. Do you think there's any possibility, Dre? Then I'm going to go on to Rudy and Disney Family Man. But real quick, I wanted to ask you: do you think there's any possibility that a possible deal with Comcast in regards to the Marvel rights might include maybe like a sweet little package in regards to like streaming? Like Disney Plus is destroying Peacock in the streaming wars. Is it possible Disney could trade, those Marvel rights, the theme park rights for maybe some sort of like multi-year deal with Peacock to have Marvel movies on Peacock or something to that effect? Is some sort of that, is that possible where it would transcend beyond just the parks and they would actually kind of use the streaming and the actual content as leverage? Is that possible?
Well, anything's possible now. I mean, some of the deals being churned out in Hollywood right now because the streaming wars are on in full force. We've seen some crazy deals like Sony doing deals with Disney and some other studios to try to get, the Spider-Man films in multiple platforms in various states. Honestly, yeah, I could see something like that. I could see something where Disney kind of trades some theme park rights for some licensing rights and those kind of things. I could see it.
Yeah, maybe that's the best way to go forward. Maybe that's the best way to do it. George, Disney Family Man, what are your thoughts on the Marvel deal? What how can Disney get these rights back? Is it a lost cause? What are your thoughts?
I think right now Disney feels like they have the upper hand, being that they pretty much have, I don't want to say a full monopoly, but let's just say if you have an extra $5,000 to take to the poker game, guess what? You're going to risk it and say, you know what? I'm going to throw my money in. All bets are in, And what I mean by that is that right now, Marvel cannot do anything more with the superhero island. However it is how it stands. True. So Disney has that upper hand to say, hey, yeah, Marvel's coming out with more stuff, but guess what, Universal? You can't do not one thing with it. However, though, each time that someone does go into that land in Universal, and as Chapek is a consumer product person, it's all about the almighty dollar, and also with The Simpsons. Anybody who purchases anything, Disney gets partial of that. So it's more of this. It's like, well, yeah, you can keep it, but you're going to keep paying us some royalties here. You want to keep it, go ahead, keep it. But I think in the long run, Universal will eventually give in. They're just waiting for the right deal that Disney will throw at them. And I think it's pretty much to say, hey, you know what? This is something important to us as well. We're not just going to give it up just for anything. It has to be a really good deal. And as Vash had pointed out, I think if anything is possible, if the right deal comes along, I think Universal will bite. And it's just to the notion that I think when Epic Universe comes out, and all those lands expand, sort of how what they do with Wizarding World of Harry Potter. They have a Harry Potter section in each of the parks. You have Diagon Alley at Universal Studios. You have Hogwarts at Islands of Adventure. I believe Epic Universe is getting the Ministry of Magic. So now with the Super Nintendo world coming to Epic Universe, Universal could have something in their back pocket to say, hey, if we end up getting rid of Marvel Superhero Island, that could be an extension of Super Nintendo, because there was a lot of concept art of what was going to be Super Nintendo World. And I think, as far as I know, it's going to be a Yoshi type of kid ride, the Donkey Kong kart coaster, and then the Mario Kart. But then there was also talks about little mini lands within Super Nintendo World. It was supposed to be Zelda, Kirby, so if they want to extend anything, they could say, hey, we could take a property that Disney really wants. If they want it, go for it, and we can do something else with it in the future. I think they are going to decide once Epic Universe is up and running and seeing how popular it is with the people.
Yeah, you bring up some great points, George, and I think that you touched upon something that I think is very valid, in that there's not going to be any more expansions of Marvel Superhero Island. Disney's not going to allow that. They can really only kind of upkeep and plus what they currently have, and it is becoming increasingly dated, because young people nowadays, when they think of Marvel, it's the MCU that they associate it with. They don't really associate it with the comics. I mean, there are some people that do associate with the comics, but for the most part, the normies, the general public, associates it with the MCU. And the Islands of Adventure version is very comic booky, and it's starting to look a little dated. And I don't think that's going to change, obviously, anytime soon. There might be an incentive for Universal to make that deal, depending on what Disney offers, obviously. But there might be some incentive. Rudio, what are your thoughts on the Marvel deal, man? Like, what do you think? Is this kind of like, do you think that Disney could possibly gain these rights back, or is it kind of like a lost cause?
And Rudy, I'm sorry, before you go on, I just have one more thing to say. For all you Maliboomer fans out there that you missed it at DCA, come on over to Universal. You can go in Doctor Doom's Fearfall. So,
that is one big pile of shit.
That's great.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I kind of want to latch on to what George said about if Universal wants to give up land. So my big intrigue is here at Universal Hollywood. The way it's configured is that Hogsmeade is positioned right next to Springfield. So, in what I think is more likely to happen than a Marvel deal is a Simpsons deal. Only for the simple fact that I think Disney sees how much value there is in The Simpsons, considering the last time I heard, or the last time I've really seen some recognition of it, is that The Simpsons is probably one of the highest rated shows on Disney Plus.
That's true.
Yeah. So they see the popularity in it still. And the fact that at D23 2019, we saw walk-around characters that Disney had made costumes for. So they're ready to go as far as Disney wanting to bring them into the fan presence of possibly the parks. So what would it be? What would it take for Disney to go to the head of Universal and say, let's get a deal. Let's get a deal done. We'll take the Simpsons off your hands. You get your land back. You want to expand Hogsmeade, make it whatever you want to expand whatever you want to do. I'm sure Universal kind of wants to do it at this point. Because the Simpsons at this point is what? 10 years old at least.
Oh, the land. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it opened in like 2008 or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty old
So,
now.
yeah, so we're getting at 13 years or so. And what would we say is the lifespan average of a Universal attraction? 25, 20 years?
Yeah, I would say roughly around that time.
Yeah. And I think Islands of Adventure is, what, 22 years old at this point? Opened in 99. So there's an average lifespan of these attractions that Universal goes through. I mean, I miss a lot of the attractions that they've gone through with E.T. I loved E.T. and I love Back to the Future. R.I.P. I see you, Bash. I see you crying.
I know. I am.
And it's just,
oh boy.
It's heartbreaking, but that's the way Universal's been. They just cycle through these IPs like it's nobody's business. And I think if Disney gave them the right price, I think Disney would buy The Simpsons and get those characters in their parks.
That's actually not a bad idea, because I was at the expo when they had the Simpsons panel. I actually was there, and I do remember seeing the walk-around characters, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I was expecting the panel, but I thought walk-around, you know, the costume characters, I'm like, okay, Disney, if that's the way you want to go. I mean, I really wanted to do the signing meet and greet with Nancy Cartwright, because he's phenomenal as Bart Simpson, and I just couldn't get a place. And I was walking up to people saying, if anyone needs a kidney, that's fine. I'll give up one if I have a place in line.
This guy right here.
You know, I believe Universal, Comcast, I think they are definitely receptive to a deal. And like you said, Rudy, I think the one point of leverage is definitely Simpsons.
Yeah,
that's kind of the bargaining chip right there, because I believe that contract is gated. It's not perpetual. There is a window for which it is, you know, and then they go to the renegotiation table and they work out the terms again. So yeah, I would say that's your kind of point of leverage right there. Maybe talks have kind of stalled for a reason. Maybe it's like, hey, we're waiting for that, and then we'll see what we can get out of them.
Yeah, I think Disney would much prefer to work with Universal and vice versa with The Simpsons first.
Yeah.
As far as, because again, with the merchandise and everything, Disney still gets a cut of it. And I think Universal would pretty much kind of hack off The Simpsons before it reaches for Marvel, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like you guys have said, that, you know, Marvel, they can't expand Superhero Island. It is what it is. It's all kind of grandfathered in as part of that deal. But it's very interesting. It's very telling how, you know, that when during the first negotiation, when that kind of dropped off, hey, we're redoing Spider-Man. We're refurbishing it. It's like, okay, that was a signal. That was a shot across the bow. That was just telling them, yeah, you know, you go ahead. You're not gonna jerk us around. So, and that's kind of what happened there. It's interesting because it actually specifies in the contract that if the show standards aren't maintained, you know, the contract goes back to Marvel, which in this case would be Disney, and they send people, I think, every year go to the park and just make sure all those standards are high, because you know, you don't want to, you know, take advantage of an opportunity if it presents itself.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting, Dre, that you mentioned that if the show standards aren't maintained, I bet Disney's lawyers are looking for every single loophole they could possibly find.
Hey, they're ready to click down on their pens, like they're ready.
Yeah, they're like this. Yeah, because I mean, that's a pretty vague thing. I mean, you can go in there, the team of lawyers can go in there and be like, well, that trash can's overflowing. You know, it's like, that's tough.
I'm guessing it would have to be a little bit more substantial.
Yeah. What's funny is, shout out to Ordinary Adventures, Peter and Kitra. They're amazing. Go check out their channel.
Good stuff.
The week Avengers Campus opened, they went to Islands of Adventure the same week to go to Marvel Land, just to get a compare and contrast. And it is just mind-boggling. Like, it is definitely going back into 1999 to see everything, how it's laid out. It's very Fantastic Four centric with Doctor Doom. obviously they have the big Hulk ride in Spider-Man, but just to see some of the stuff that they've kept up with, like there is an actual comic book shop in the island or in that part of that park. And what else is there? There's the walk around characters, and the walk around characters are kind of
yeah.
kind of
It's kind of interesting. It's what everybody kind of thought, like, oh, who are the marketable characters back in the 90s, you know? And it's like, hey, let's walk into a comic book kind of aesthetic and stuff. It's very interesting.
Well, the other thing is, too, that on top of with the attractions that Steven Spielberg is tied to the Spider-Man ride, because he had a lot of his imprints on that. So we all know how Spielberg is with licensing and, you know, especially with Roger Rabbit, you know, we kind of got a little bit of, you know, with that, with Amblin and everything. So, I mean, there's some hurdles along with that. You know, it's not just, you know, dealing with Universal and Marvel. I mean, you're dealing with a head honcho of Hollywood.
Absolutely.
But Spider-Man has gotten what ride of the year consecutively over the past 15 years.
Since I think since 1999, it was like there was like consecutive years that it just kept on that. And I mean, it's not in the land, but Dudley Do Right's Rips Off Falls as far as like a log flume ride. You know, it actually beat Splash Mountain. So
wow. That's wild.
You know, hopefully we get some kind of resolution to this. Speaking of Steven Spielberg, that deal for Islands of Adventure is quite lucrative for him. Like, he gets a lot of money off that IOA deal. So hopefully the Marvel rights revert back and
life finds a way.
Hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. So while still on the topic, obviously, of Universal, we're gonna pivot to Epic Universe. Epic Universe. So Universal, this was a few weeks back, or maybe even like a month or so. There was some talk, and they left out. I think it was the CEO of Comcast. He left out the mention of Fantastic Beasts as part of that overall makeup of Epic Universe. And Dre, I don't know, did he mention I think he mentioned like Illumination, right? If I'm not mistaken.
He sure did. He mentioned Illuminations, which is the first time that studio had been mentioned in talks for Epic Universe. Everything that we had known prior to that suggested that Illuminations wasn't originally going to be a part of the initial slate, and now it might be. Very interesting.
It's very, very interesting, and I think there's a couple of things here. There's a couple, like those circus acts where they juggle, like they kind of spin the plates. There's a couple different plates here that we're dealing with. I think number one is the first plate is, I think, the J.K. Rowling factor. She hasn't been the most popular person on social media lately, and I think that's part of it for sure. The next plate would be Johnny Depp, which is also another issue.
Yeah.
And another plate would be just the overall lack of interest in this franchise of Fantastic Beasts. While the Harry Potter, that Wizarding World is extremely popular, the Fantastic Beasts movies really haven't caught fire. So I think it's kind of like a perfect storm of all these elements, and Universal's looking at it and saying, you know what, maybe it would be better with a Minions Sing, Pets Land instead of the drama that would come along with the Fantastic Beasts. But Dre, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you think that's kind of what's playing into factor here, or?
Well, it's quite interesting because I look, when you detailed the topics that we were gonna be talking about, and you mentioned Fantastic Beasts specifically, I did a little dig, and I reached out my source and saying, hey, what are you hearing? And I guess there was some arguments between, should we go with the American Ministry of Magic, or should we go with the UK Ministry of Magic? Kind of this Fantastic Beasts versus the kind of the traditional Wizarding World that we all kind of know about. And it looks like, from what I can find, they're going with the traditional kind of the UK or the British Ministry of Magic with the kind of the traditional Wizarding World as we kind of know from the initial slate of movies. It's interesting because I can go through all of Epic Universe if you want me to, but what's fascinating is there was a concept for a VR kind of broomstick attraction. Actually, I have a slide of it to kind of show what that's all about. And if that was supposed to be part of the Epic Universe land, the kind of Ministry of Magic land that was going to be in there, I'm hearing that the latest rumors indicate that that might actually be plucked out and placed in Universal Studios Florida, where their Fear Factor Live show building is.
Okay.
And like I said, if you want to go through Epic Universe, you want to go through all that, I do have a slide kind of detailing this and where that is. Yeah,
Let's do it. Is that okay? Is that what you added to the stream?
So it is. Yeah, it's right here.
This one?
That's it.
All
so this attraction's very, very interesting in that it's a VR type attraction. And it's actually kind of everything's the most likely or the most similar attraction that we know of in the world right now is this kind of Twilight midnight run ride. It's over there in Asia. I couldn't find these specific park. They get like a billion parks over there. I do apologize, guys, but over there, you get on kind of a motorbike, and you go on this kind of VR attraction, and it's kind of you kind of have a room full of motorbikes. You get on them, and they have like a motion base. It's kind of like think of it like a mechanical bull, and you go through it. What Universal wants to do is adapt that kind of technology and do it for the brooms. And you can see bottom left, they've already filed the patents on this kind of technology. What's really interesting about this is not only will you kind of be holding on to a broom underneath you, but it will they want to kind of incorporate hand tracking into it, which creates the possibility for like spells and stuff. Or what if it's like a Quidditch match where you catch the kind of the ball there. Sorry, I don't know all the terminology. I do apologize, guys. but
shame on you.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Wait, that's weird. That's weird. Okay, all right. I gotta get my terminology, I guess.
Sorry for the name calling.
But no, I mean that's kind of what they want to do here. But instead of it being an Epic Universe, it would be the largest scale VR ride, but it would be placed in Fear Factor. The Fear Factor building adjacent to Diagon Alley. That's kind of where the rumors are indicating right now. I heard this from two separate sources. Give it up the theme park stop, by the way, Alicia Stella. They do a great job. But I heard it from another source that this is where they want to do what they want to do in the interim of Epic Universe actually coming online.
And that's why Illuminations eventually got brought into the conversation, because if it does happen, then where they would put the Harry Potter, that's where the Illuminations would go. Possibly.
But I'm hearing that a Wizarding World presence is still on the table. Wow. Remember, there's 2 expansion sites that weren't initially going to be utilized, which they can kind of grow out in the park master plan as they've kind of envisioned. But for the Ministry of Magic back at Epic Universe, I'm hearing, this is the first time I've ever heard something like this, and I checked my source, and I was like, are you right about this? Yes, he is right about this. Or at least, as accurate as the information is right now. The e-ticket that would replace this VR attraction in Epic Universe would be like a scissors lift attraction from Confrontation, almost. So Confrontation opened up with the park, with the resort, with Universal Studios Florida back in 1990. It closed, it was very temperamental when it existed. They had some power issues, technical issues, obviously. But part of that attraction was you were suspended, and there was kind of a scissors lift operation. You can see below what I'm talking about. Just take that, reverse it, hang it up from the ceiling. That's kind of what was going on there. And it sounds insane because the scale of something like that was massive. And so you set that in the Harry Potter universe, that could be very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's wild. That is
Mhm.
absolutely wild. Rudio, what are your thoughts on this?
Like how you guys said earlier, I'm going to latch on to the J.K. Rowling situation. I mean, just from the standpoint of me following the news with the video game that's supposed to be coming out for the PlayStation 5, a lot of the developers or people who are with the developing company kind of want to step away from her. They don't feel that she reflects the right, we'll say, vibes that the company wants to align with. And so you bring that whole controversy into the mix. I mean, I love everything that Vash is showing here, but to me, I think you have your established Harry Potter in the Universal parks already. So you already have dedicated land to that. It'd be interesting to see what Illumination brings, because as crazy as this sounds, Minions still brings in a lot of traffic. The Despicable Me ride, every time I see a vlogger cover it, I guess I don't know, George, you probably seen it more than I have. Is it in the front of the park or like near the entrance?
It's more in the front of the park. As soon as when you enter through, you walk down the street and it's literally right on the left. It's like one of the first attractions you bump into.
Okay, because
Awesome.
that's always the first thing that's being featured, and there's always a line. And I've been on the Universal Hollywood version of that ride, and it is not great. Mind you, I'm a 33-year-old male with no kids. I don't see anything enticing about that other than the fact that you smell bananas in the beginning of the ride.
Yeah,
But
I agree with you, Rudio. It's nothing to write home about.
Yeah,
It's
nothing to
kind of
write
like
home.
whatever.
Yeah, but as a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old who's really into Minions, I'd go crazy because it's a fun ride for them. And there's a little dance party. And then I got to ride Secret Life of Pets recently, and that is a great experience. Even, I'm going to show my age again. I'm 33 years old, don't have any children, but yet I still had fun on that ride. It is a dark ride. It is a dark ride to Imagineering on Universal's end to their peak. They really did a great job with that ride. So if they can go ahead and say, we're going to build more on that, go right ahead. I really want to see what they would do with those characters and that world building for Illumination versus Wizarding World.
Yeah, and you know what, Rudio? The Universal was actually brilliant in building that Pets ride here in LA, because you're in LA as well. We're both LA guys. And man, I mean, you can't go 10 feet without seeing a dog in a stroller. We love our pets out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a knock on the city life and how pets are portrayed, but it's such a fun experience because you are literally being pretty much presented as you are a dog, and
That's
you're
funny.
getting to see the life through their eyes, and you get a nice doggy wash, and you're getting adopted. So it's a cool experience just to see that. But imagine what they could do with their other properties that Illumination has. Mind you, Minions and Secret Life of Pets are pretty much their big money getters,
Right.
but I like to see more of their properties get some attention and get more presence in the parks.
Yeah, absolutely. George, what are your thoughts on Fantastic Beasts? I mean, what are your feeling on this?
I actually agree with Ridio on this. I feel that Universal already sort of kind of has it in the back of their minds. They can't fail with Harry Potter. It's such a success as is. And I think that they are one that kind of likes to separate themselves from Disney by not repeating themselves. So I think that, yes, they will still definitely have an expansion of Harry Potter, but I think thinking in the brains of Universal that they're not going to be worried about it. You know, it'll be a success. You know, I'm for sure everything that Vash had shown us, it looks really cool. I can't wait for it. But as Rudio said, I'm more curious of what they're going to do with Illuminations, because I've watched YouTube videos of Secret Life of Pets and the queuing of that, even before you get on the ride. I mean, I'd just go in there just to walk around the queue, because it sort of kind of reminds me of how the new queue was for Peter Pan's Flight, where you enter in the Darling House and you have the lifelike animated beds and Nana's doghouse, and then it transport you onto the ride. And I also think that's how it's going to be with Ratatouille. So it transports you in the moment where you see through the lens of the characters, and I love that. I absolutely love that.
It does exactly what George is explaining. The most, to me, the West Coast version of this is Roger Rabbit, Toonspin. How deep that line cue goes, and how animated and how in depth that cue goes. I would say that's what I would compare it to, from my eyes. But you got to see the Peter Pan ride, and I've seen videos of that, and that is comparable as well. Absolutely.
And especially with Sing 2 coming up. I mean, Sing actually caught me by surprise because, I mean, we took our son to go see it in theaters, and I thought, okay, it's a cute little movie. I actually enjoyed that movie. I mean, call me crazy. I actually enjoyed it. So I'm actually curious to see how successful Sing 2 is and what they possibly could incorporate into that. Because, I mean, we have to face it, as Rubio pointed out, Disney has the Main Street Bakery, and Universal has the sense of banana. You know, so it's like you got to pick and choose. I think Universal is starting to kind of adopt what Disney had done for many, many decades with these dark rides, and I think Universal needs that, because if they want to draw in younger kids and families, they need something to withhold a full day for young kids, because back in 2014, we were going to take Josh to Universal. He was only 4 at the time. And actually, it was a Universal worker that said, to be honest with you, to spend the money on a ticket, he really can't do too much except for Suit Landing. That was it at the time. So we bypassed Universal. So I think they're trying to adopt a little bit of what Disney has and kind of have something for all ages.
Yeah.
It's well known in the industry. It's been well known for a while that Universal they don't have those franchises that appeal to the little ones, and so allowing them to make experiences for them. They've wanted to get past that for a while now, and Illumination has been just a godsend in that, because a lot of their franchises are beloved by kids all over the world. It's interesting because there is a Sing attraction. I think it's in Universal Osaka. There is a Sing attraction out there. I don't know what it is, but it exists. I agree with you guys. I would love to see what additionally they do. I haven't heard anything for Epic Universe specifically, but man, I wouldn't. It's definitely a possibility, as the CEO says. Interestingly, in Universal Studios Florida, the Shrek 4D attraction, there's been a lot of rumors kind of associated with that, and it looks like if Secret Life of Pets is going to come out, it might actually end up being there. That's kind of the rumor I'm hearing.
Interesting.
And as far as with the Fantastic Beasts part go, I think, as you had all mentioned, what's going on with J.K. Rowling, on social media, what have you, and really, to be honest, that's where Universal beat Disney with the Harry Potter, because it was actually in the palm of Disney's hand, and there was a lot of issues going back and forth between Rowling and the company, and even with Universal, she was there every single day, every little nook and cranny that they were making this land. She was basically the P.L. Travers of Harry Potter.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I think really to then dive into an additional franchise of the Harry Potter world, I really don't know if Universal wants to tackle all those legalities again with her. So it's pretty much just kind of stick to what they have, stick to what they know, and it become a success.
Well, and George, you bring up a great point, and I brought this up before too, in that Universal, what they need to do, in my opinion, to really kind of become, an alternative to Disney, is to kind of not completely end the licensing stuff. I think that it's important to still have Wizarding World. It's still important to have Nintendo. But Universal needs to start to get a little more IP independence. And what I mean by that is that it needs to start to utilize its own stuff more. more in-house stuff. And I think that's part of the reason why too. I think it's very important right now that Comcast looks at these studios. A lot of studios right now, the consolidation is real, because of the streaming battle,
Yeah.
Universal should jump on that and try to buy some of these studios, get that IP under their belt so they have more in-house stuff. I think that's very, very important, not to rely so heavily on licensing out, because you can do it here and there, but I don't think it's good for Universal to depend on it,
I'm hearing a couple of things on that front, actually. Well, for one, Epic Universe will have 2 other distinct lands that are fully theirs. One is How to Train Your Dragon. Speaking of, rights for the little ones, a lot of those will actually be there. And then there's also...
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
So the Universal Monsters are also going to have a presence, which sounds phenomenal. That sounds amazing. So I think they are kind of leveraging their brands and kind of looking in that.
Good.
Well, I'm so glad they're going after the monsters, by the way, because we fans have been asking for that for I mean, as old as I've been alive, like 20 years.
Can you imagine the possibilities, like when they have like the Halloween Horror Nights?
Oh yeah.
What they can do with that specific land? It's
huge.
It's going to be like, from what I got a slide on that too, but it's going to be like a Dracula's kind of village, like a Bavarian village or like a Frankenstein's village at the bottom.
Walk in the land and they have these specialty lights that just turn us all black and white. Like
That'd be awesome.
That'd be fun.
That's amazing. I am, like Rudio said, like he's older, I'm kind of older too. And like the older Universal stuff is so interesting to me. I love the Universal monsters. I'm in love with Back to the Future. That King Kong, that's my wheelhouse. When it comes to Universal, that's my wheelhouse. So for them to bring that, at least a piece of that into Epic Universe, you sold me. And I think that's really, really dope. Like I'm kind of too old for the Minion thing, I think, at this point. I can't get too hyped for it, but I do appreciate that a lot of little ones do enjoy that. So that is cool. That is a cool aspect to Epic.
So you
Universe.
mean to tell me you wouldn't trade in the Universal monsters for bananas?
No. No.
Has anybody heard about the rumors about Comcast maybe acquiring Lionsgate? Has anybody?
I thought they already did. No,
not yet, but I have heard.
I heard speculation. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I have heard that Lionsgate has been in talks. I heard it was kind of a vague thing. I think it was on Variety where they're talking to many studios. Comcast might be one of them.
Okay.
And what does Lionsgate own? Do you know exactly, Dre?
Hey, you know what? We may see Medea walking around.
Let me just. I just want to make sure I don't get this wrong here. Let me just look this up.
if I'm not
Because I
mistaken,
think they own a pretty big franchise. Give me a second.
I think they own John Wick.
Do they? Oh,
If they own John Wick, that would be.
Oh, that'd be sick.
that'd
That'd be
dope.
awesome.
Yeah, stunt show, baby.
John Wick versus Jason Bourne. Let's go.
Yes.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. Properties. I thought they might have owned something else, but they don't.
No, I thought they did.
I'm gonna have to look into that because I'm sure something park related could come from that. If it's John Wick, that'd be slick.
That would be. Yeah, Lionsgate's not a huge studio, but it's a sizable studio.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to pick up some cool franchises in that deal if it happens. Absolutely. And I still think, I know the Discovery thing is still kind of in the works with Warner Brothers, but man, if Universal could snatch Warner Media, that would be such a huge game changer, because then you have the whole comic book war. And Universal could go against Disney with their DC franchise. Ooh,
proper.
It would be so incredible.
Proper way.
Yeah.
Not
It's
this
interesting
Six
'cause-
Flags, whatever they try to make
IOA,
Yeah.
that was originally where they were going to go. They were going to go after
Wow.
the DC properties, and bring in like a Batwing ride and Superman ride and all that kind of stuff. And then they had to settle for Marvel on the other side. I mean, they were this close and they couldn't work out a
Wow.
deal. It's fascinating how sometimes this
But
stuff
I
goes
still
around.
think that all those ideas are still open on the table in the near future. That one thing will lead to another, and I think for both Disney and Universal, both companies are waiting for is the right deal to either present to the other and for the other one to accept.
Right.
So once that happens, I think then it'll open many doors and many possibilities for both companies.
Every company has a price.
Oh, yeah.
And you're absolutely right, George. I mean, nothing is off the table for the right price tag. Disney, Universal, they'll, whatever company it is, really, they'll work it out. Absolutely. For the right price tag. But I do want to pivot a little bit now to Disney and Universal and the operational differences between these two companies in terms of theme parks. Dre, I'm going to start with you. What do you feel? I mean, it seems like lately there's been a lot of differences. What do you feel are some pretty big operational differences between these two companies in terms of how they run their theme park business?
Oh, it's massive. I was having this discussion with George. I get the sense that Universal's just a little bit more hungrier for it.
Right.
They're doing stuff, not only old school. I mean, they're putting in, they're putting in like major attractions like every single year, at least in their parks in Florida. They are keeping up with Hollywood to an extent, which is good to see. But they're out there. They seem a lot more guest oriented in just their operations. Disney has been bullish on a lot of the stuff and a lot of the cuts and a lot of the reductions of service and so forth. Universal, not quite that way. Obviously, they've had to contend with some of the issues relating about in our time period specifically, but they've been a lot more deferential to the guest. If the guest doesn't like something, they will get away with it. I'm sorry, pull it out, so to speak. So, like, for example, reservations. Reservations weren't popular with guests. A guest didn't like them. It kind of screwed up, as we've said on the show many times, spontaneous visitation, right? And they pulled it out. In Hollywood, as soon as those restrictions came off, I mean, well, actually, even before then, like 2 weeks after, they pulled off the reservation thing.
Very soon after they did pull away the reservations. Yeah.
Yeah. They implemented a virtual queuing system for Velocicoaster when that opened, and they quickly pulled out of that too because it was just, it just didn't get the reception that they felt that it needed to kind of stay there. Oh, go ahead, Radio.
No, I was going to say they did bring back a virtual queue system for Hagrid's. Actually.
For Hagrid's, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and that virtual queue system actually, I think, works better than anything Disney has executed. As if, for instance, the problem that I have, I'll say, is I wake up in the morning, I'm 2 hours away, give or take, away from the parks, and I might have group number one, for that day. Yeah. Universal gives you the option to postpone your
which is
virtual queue.
Crazy. That is a wild feature right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that to me, that works better for the guests, and I hope Disney follows suit because right now Universal is killing the game in that.
And they are killing the game, and they have passes. I mean, both coasts you can't get a pass.
Keyword annual passes.
They have annual passes. That's correct, and it's like, look. With Velocicoaster's opening, for example, they made this kind of internet meme, the churro stand kind of thing. They handed out free churros at opening. Could you imagine Disney doing stuff like that? I'm just saying, it just seems like, to me, they're hungrier for it. To me, they're just they're a little bit more guest orientated at this point than we've ever seen. And look,
really spectacular. Spared no expense.
Spared no expense. That's what they're doing.
Dr. Hammond said it best.
That's true, but I do have to kind of play a little devil's advocate here in the sense of annual pass holders, because Disneyland Resort has over 1 million annual pass holders, and Universal doesn't come close to that. It's a little easier for them to.
I think they're getting there. I honestly think because of the whole cancellation and us legacy pass holders having nowhere to go. And I think as soon as those platinum passes went on sale, boom. I think they oversold.
But it makes me wonder again, back in the very beginning of our conversation, when you look at the numbers, Disney looks at those numbers every day. Now, can we fully rely on those numbers? No, but is Disney? I think they are, because in their minds, they could be thinking, oh, Universal can go all out with their annual passes. The second we hit that switch back on, everyone's going to be crawling back no matter what the price. And Disney knows this. And that's where I think Disney kind of gets a little bit, and I can't believe I'm using this term, Disney, I love you, please don't hate me. They get a little bit cocky in the sense where it's like they have that chip on their shoulder that I think Universal doesn't right now. And I think that's where Universal is more laxed with maneuvering stuff. As fast as something can come, they say, okay, we'll adjust it for you. We'll change it to this. We'll do this. We'll do that. And I think Disney is just so dead on whatever is working with us over how many years. We're not changing one thing. And especially now with the reservation systems and the ticketing systems, the best analogy that I can give is it's like math. Universal is using the old school math that I grew up on, and Disney is using Common Core. They're getting to the same answer, but Disney is going through how many different steps to get to an answer that Universal already has.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but I do think that if Universal had, at least here in California, if they had the same demand that Disneyland Resort had, I think you would see a little bit of a different approach. I mean, there's two different, like, the thing is that, like, Disney's trying to decrease its amount of annual pass holders because they have an overcrowding issue, and Universal's trying to build it up. So there's going to be different approaches. Universal's going to hand them out like candy. Disney doesn't want to do that, though, because they can't afford to do that because it gets too crowded with APs. It's a different approach, I think. You know what I'm saying?
Now, let me ask you guys, now, when Disney does turn the AP switches back on, no matter what the price, and I had this conversation with Bash, and do you guys feel that no matter what the price, guests are just gonna say, you know what, it's back on. We want our annual passes back. Here's my money. Let me pull out my wallet.
I do.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of them will, but I think the really determining factor will be, what do you get with that pass or subscription service?
That's
and that's kind of because let's be honest here, Disney, I mean, before all this happened, they were looking to cut the annual pass number down to like a third or half of what it was before. And that tells me that they have no problem getting rid of people.
They don't.
And so I would think that with whatever system they implement is going to be geared that way. Is going to be geared towards like, hey, we don't care.
And I think
people drop off here.
And I think another factor is too that Universal kind of has a little bit of the upper hand right now over Disney. Is Disney needs to get all of their cast members back. As many as of the cast members that they got rid, they need those cast members, because with spending 2 weeks down there, I absolutely loved it. But you can definitely tell the demand of cast members that are needed in those parks.
Yeah.
Universal Studios Florida just upped their pay, I think, to like $15 an hour, which is, I think, is $1 more than what Disney pays right now. I know Disney's been having some issues on their end. They thought, oh, we're going to get this windfall of cast members from the Disney College program. And what they found out was that they went to that college and said, hey, who do you got? And it's like, nobody. And it's like, and so they're having major issues.
Now,
right?
Gosh, did Disney say, I heard that they could possibly be raising again by 2023?
You mean pay?
Minimum wage, yeah. I
would assume it would happen faster than that, because I mean they're really having problems in Orlando right now. Just getting cast. I mean, they're shipping in bus drivers from out of state.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad. But look, I just look at the differences between Universal and Disney right now, and I gotta say, Universal, I mean, they gave us back a nighttime show, man, within months of coming back online.
Sure.
Or it took like a year for Disney to do the same.
And again, that's what my analogy is. Like, they both have the same system in a sense, but it's taking Disney 3 times longer to get to the same answer that Universal already has done. And it's like, it just makes me wonder, does Disney have something else up its sleeve that, we may not know, like behind the closed doors? Like, do they have an initial plan once this all fleshes out?
I don't think so, George. I think what it comes down to is that Disney is getting a lot of people, and I think that they're not as hungry as Universal.
Well, you hear Chapek talk about us, like, yeah, we got super fans. We got super fan
Right.
issue. It's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, it's like, really? That's how you gotta... Now, look, Universal, like you said, Orange Grove, it just feels like they're hungry. It feels like they want the guests more. And I gotta say, there is a new upcoming generation that has no nostalgia for Disney like we do now. They're just going to the parks and they're just experiencing how they are. And I gotta be honest, I see a lot of kids having a lot more nostalgia for Universal than they do Disney right now. And so, yeah, you can go ahead and go with this path here, but how sustainable is it? Because Universal, they're making nostalgia right now. They're not capitalizing on nostalgia that's been made over the decades. All right. And I got to say, from my personal experience, I grew up as a bigger Universal fan than I did a Disney fan. When I was growing up, that kind of changed 2004, 2005. But as you can see, but no, I was a huge Universal fan. I looked forward to those trips to Universal Studios Hollywood more than I did Disneyland back in the day. I know how it feels.
See, your background is all a ruse. Like just behind you could just like rip it down. It's one big piece of wallpaper.
Exactly. I have the DeLorean back there. I got the Jurassic Park the Ride posters. You don't even know.
Back to the Future, King Kong. It's all right there.
That's it. I'm telling you. Let me see. There it is. There it is back there. You don't even see it. It's back there.
Yeah, but you
Awesome.
make a good point. You make a very, very good point. I mean, I think that, look, I just think it's two companies that have two different, very different goals. I think Disney, at least here in Anaheim, is in the business right now of kind of mitigating the crowding. So they're looking to eliminate, unfortunately, a lot of people because we just don't have the room. And I think Universal is looking for more people. So you're going to have two different opposing strategies because there's two different opposing goals. It's very, very interesting. But we'll see what happens. Now, I do want to close out the Universal conversation with one final topic, which is the Universal Studios Hollywood potential. What kind of potential do they have there in Hollywood? Now, they're very limited on space, even probably more so than Disneyland at Resort. Dre, I'm going to start with you. Where do you see Universal Studios Hollywood going forward? Where do they go from here?
I have my what I think is going to happen, and I have my wants. I'll say my wants for, when you come back around again. But for what I think is going to happen, it's very interesting. These things are all very fluid. I mean, I remember when Secret Life of Pets was going to be in the lower lot, and they moved it to the upper lot. And these things move around all the time. Obviously, we're getting Nintendo. We're getting the Mario Kart, and it looks like Donkey Kong is also on the short list right there. If it won't be an open day attraction, it will soon follow as a part of a phase 2 for Nintendo, Super Nintendo World, which is awesome. That's great. That is fantastic. Beyond that, we have been hearing for a little while now that Diagon Alley might show up in some part of Universal Studios Hollywood. Some have said that maybe the current studio tour loading zone, an unloading zone, might play a part in that. We'll see. I got to confess here, I love Waterworld, but it's been there for quite some time, and it's sitting right next to there, and maybe something happens out of that. I'm not quite sure, but I think Diagon Alley I think is I think it's pretty for sure. Outside of anything else, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. Rudio, what are your thoughts on the future of Universal Hollywood? Where do we go from here?
I'll just say what Vash just said. Diagon Alley. I think if you bring Diagon Alley to Universal Hollywood, you make Universal Hollywood a destination vacation. Because right now, at the moment, Universal Studios Hollywood is probably, minus the studio tour. Studio tour takes probably about an hour and a half to get through.
Yeah.
It's probably a good 6-hour park.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
similar to Knott's in California Adventure, where you're there for a day. And
Yeah.
you're there. You don't have to be there at rope drop, and you don't have to be there till park closing. You can come right in the middle of the day and conquer that park. And for them to bring more attractions, more shows, you want it to be a destination for that Hollywood area. Because considering that the only competition that it has in the county is Six Flags, and
Right.
are we really looking at Six Flags as competition for Universal?
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, Rudio, you've seen some shifting around the studio a lot.
Yes.
Might-
So
okay.
there has been some pictures. There has been some video of clearing of some land in the back lot. So the famous log cabin that was right in front of the big blue screen, that's been taken out. The Superstore area, that's been taken out. And there is speculation that the War of the Worlds set will be taken out. How that happens and when that happens, who knows? This is all rumors and speculation. But if they were to clear out that land and make room for Diagon Alley, more sound stages, or potentially just maneuver things around, it brings more life to the park. Whether that's on the back end with the studios or whether that's on stage with the guests, it definitely brings more life into the park. So I hope that's what they're preparing for. I mean, the biggest indication that we need more land was 4th of July. The fact that they needed to have two areas for firework displays, and that at one point of the night, the guests on the lower lot weren't allowed to go up to the upper lot because it was just too packed.
That's a bad look.
It's a capacity issue, and I think Universal wants to nip that in the bud and create more land so that way guests can enjoy the park with a little bit more room to breathe, especially here in the year 2021, where we know what happens when you pack tight spaces.
Right. And I think, yeah, it's a great point, Rudy. And I think that like when you're looking at like the Southern California landscape, you know, Disneyland Resort, I mean, looks like Walt Disney World. I mean, compared to Universal Hollywood in terms of resorts, you know, I mean, we have 3 resort hotels, we have a shopping district, 2 theme parks, you know, it's compared to Hollywood, it's pretty vast, you know?
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge. So I think that Universal, if they can manage it, if Comcast can work this out somehow, expand their theme park, get an official Universal hotel on property, really making it like a resort as much as they possibly can on that property, it would go a long way. Disney would definitely take notice, that's for sure. What do you think, George? Have you been, by the way, George, I know you're more of a Florida guy. Have you been to Universal Studios Hollywood?
Not Hollywood. I have not, but I mean, I have, you know, watched a lot of videos, seen a lot of photos, but I have to say what Rudio said of what Vash said, you know, it's pretty much would be a done deal if they can get Diagon Alley into Universal Hollywood. It would be a great addition to, you know, the smaller section of what they already have for Wizarding World as what they have in Florida. It would, you know, expand Harry Potter because, I mean, no matter how you look at it, Harry Potter is a huge success for Universal. Why would they not want to capitalize on that? And then on top of adding Nintendo, you got 2 heavy hitters. Like, you put that in that park, I mean, you're good to go for a good decade.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, like Drea said, and I completely agree, they're hungry. They are hungry. And I think that they will continue to try to look for ways to expand Hollywood. I'm personally a huge fan of the tram tour. I'm old school.
Oh,
I love the tram.
massive,
I love the
massive
tram.
fan. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask you guys, what are your thoughts about the Mummy ride?
For me personally, and I'll get to the other two gentlemen. But me personally, I'd be fine with them replacing it with something else. What do you guys feel about that?
I like the ride system as far as the ride system goes, but I mean, as far as it being a different skin of like something else, I'm okay with it.
George, what's funny is I've heard many things as far as your park's Mummy ride, as far as the queue and the story of the Mummy, that it's much better than our version.
From watching your the video for at Hollywood, ours is much better.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as if they were to just I mean, I love the Mummy movies, I really do. It's but I mean, I think it's time to kind of move along with the ages, so to speak.
Yeah.
The problem what happened with the Mummy is in University of Florida they put it into Confrontation, right? And that show building was very, very large. Unfortunately, they put ours in ET. And ET is extremely small, and that comes across in the ride length. To get something that fast, you can't have too much track, and it does feel short. So for me, I would like to have it replaced with. Yeah.
Some dinos.
Is this right next to Jurassic, World? I mean, that I would love to see. That would be amazing.
I mean, we've seen Jurassic World. I think all of us in this room have seen it.
Yeah.
Gyroscope.
Yes.
That would
And
be
there, and there have been rumors. Our friend Theme Park Wizard, actually, I think he did a video on this like last week or something, where there are rumors of that was it called a
Gyroscope?
Gyroscope.
Yeah.
Attraction coming possibly to Universal. Will it come here in Hollywood? I don't know, but that would be a pretty cool addition, and that'd be a perfect spot for it. Would be the Mummy right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh man, to get that amazing intimate Blitz coaster. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. Hollywood needs a coaster. It needs a signature coaster. Yeah, exactly. Right here in my veins. Need a signature coaster. That'd be awesome.
That would be great. That would be great. I think that in the Jurassic World franchise is an evergreen kind of franchise.
I think so.
That it's always going to be around. Mummy, not so much. So I think it would be a smart move for them. Absolutely. But guys, thank you so much for coming on this very first Universal discussion video. I appreciate you guys coming on so much. I'm going to go down the row and we're going to close this out. Rudio, where can they find you, sir, on social media?
You guys can find me on Instagram and on TikTok. Rudio, like I said, we're hyping up. We're getting ready for horror season, horror nights, Oogie Boogie Bash, Scary Farm. Let's go.
Yes. And Mr. Family Man 23, where can they find you on social media, sir?
You can find me on YouTube at Disney Family Man 23, also on Twitter at Disney George, and on Instagram under the Disney Family Man name.
Yes. And Mr. Vast Sky, where can they find you, sir?
Best place to find me is right here at VashGuy on Twitter. At least to interact with me is the best place to do that. And to see me, I'm on your channel at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news, information squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Now, I think I have the perfect outro to take us out. I don't know if it's going to get copywritten. We'll see.
We'll see.
It's at the end. We have to leave Universal somehow, right? We might as well do it in style.
Because you know what? It's all about family.
Well, we're going, we don't need roads.
Yeah!
Yes. I love that.
I love it too.
I love that. That is one of my favorite endings to a movie ever. Where we're going,
and if it gets taken off, then we just have a blank sign and we're all just making motions and people.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was great. I remember being a kid and seeing that and go, no way. And then Back to the Future 2 came out, and then like the hoverboards and the whole 9 yards. It was just too much for me as a kid, dude. Too much.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm still bitter about that attraction leaving, but
Me
we'll
too.
see.
I wish I would bring it back. Come on, Universal. Come on,
Oh.
Brian Roberts.
1 year.
Yo.
Come on. Come on.
But thank you all. Thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye bye, guys.